The air in my parents' house always smelled the same. A comforting blend of my mom's lemon-scented cleaner and whatever pot roast was slowly tenderizing in the oven. It was the scent of my childhood, a fragrance that was supposed to mean safety and unconditional love. But for the past 6 months, it had only served to tie a tighter knot in my stomach. Today, that knot felt like a lead weight. I parked my beat-up Civic behind a gleaming new SUV I knew belonged to Mark. Of course, it did. Taking a deep breath, I walked up the familiar concrete path. Through the bay window, I could see them. My younger sister, Olivia, was curled into Mark's side on the loveseat, her laughter silent but vibrant through the glass. Mark, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I thought I'd marry, brushed a strand of blonde hair from her face. It was a gesture so intimate, so familiar, it felt like a physical blow. 6 months. 6 months since I'd found the texts, since my world had imploded, and since I'd made the gut-wrenching decision to forgive them. For the family. That's what my parents had urged. Don't let a boy tear this family apart, Chloe. I plastered on a smile before opening the door. I'm here, I called out, my voice sounding unnaturally cheerful. My mom rushed out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Chloe, darling, we were starting to worry. Her eyes darted towards the living room, a silent plea for civility. I nodded a tiny, almost imperceptible gesture. I can do this. Olivia bounced up. Chloe, so glad you made it. She hugged me, a quick, stiff embrace that felt more like a formality than affection. Mark and I were just finalizing our plans for the Cape. You should see the rental, it's right on the water. Sounds nice, I mumbled, avoiding Mark's gaze. He just offered a quiet, hey, Chloe, his eyes unable to meet mine for more than a second. The cowardice was almost as insulting as the betrayal. Throughout dinner, I was a ghost at my own family table. I listened to stories about their new life, their weekend trips, their shared jokes. Each laugh, each shared glance between them was a fresh paper cut on a wound that refused to heal. I focused on my mashed potatoes, pushing them around my plate, the taste of ashes in my mouth. After dinner, I was escaping to the kitchen to help my mom when Olivia cornered me by the dishwasher. Her expression was one of saccharine-sweet concern. You've been so quiet all night, she said, her voice low. I really hope you're not still letting this whole thing with Mark get to you. It's been half a year. For your own good, you need to start moving on. The condescension was a lit match to my frayed nerves. I placed a glass in the rack with a soft clink, my hand trembling slightly. Liv, I'm trying, I'm here, I'm being civil. Can we just leave it at that? She let out a sigh, a theatrical display of exasperation. See, this is what I mean. You're so sensitive. You make everything a bigger deal than it needs to be. It's not healthy to hold on to anger like this. She patted my arm, a gesture meant to seem comforting but felt like a brand. I recoiled, my patience finally snapping. Forgiveness wasn't peace, it was a gag order. And I was tired of choking on my own silence. Olivia's words, just move on, hung in the air, thick and suffocating like the summer humidity clinging to the windows of our parents' Chicago home. For a moment, I was frozen, the clatter of the silverware I was drying fading into a dull roar in my ears. A year of swallowed words, of forced smiles and gritted teeth was boiling over. My gaze dropped to her neck, where a glint of silver caught the light. It was a locket, a cheap, flimsy imitation of the one Mark had given me for our second anniversary. A heavy, custom-engraved piece I now kept buried in a box in my closet. Is that supposed to be my locket? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Olivia's hand flew to her throat, her fingers closing around the trinket. Mark bought it for me, she said, her tone defensive. He thought it was pretty. It's a knockoff, Olivia, I shot back, my voice rising. A cheap copy, just like everything else about you. The dam broke. The argument spilled out of the kitchen as our voices escalated, drawing the others from the living room. My mother appeared in the doorway first, her face a mask of weary disapproval. Chloe, please, we were having such a nice day. She started it, I said, pointing a trembling finger at Olivia. She's standing there wearing a replica of the necklace Mark gave me, telling me to get over it. Mark and my father were right behind her now. Mark wouldn't meet my eyes, his gaze fixed on a spot on the floor. My father just looked tired. "This is ridiculous," Olivia sobbed, tears instantly welling in her eyes. It was a performance I'd seen 100 times. "I can't do anything right. You're always twisting things, trying to make me the villain." "You are the villain," I yelled, the sound raw and torn from my throat. "You slept with my boyfriend. You destroyed my life, and you stand there crying because I called out your tacky jewelry?" "That's enough," my father's voice boomed, silencing me. He looked at me, his expression pleading. "Chloe, your sister is trying. We all are. Why can't you?" The injustice of it was a physical blow. They saw her tears, her performance of victimhood, and I was the problem. I was the one who couldn't let it go. Olivia saw her advantage. She pressed her back against the counter, widening her eyes as if I were a physical threat. "She's scaring me," she whispered to Mark. "She's becoming unhinged." That was it. The word hung in the air, a deliberate, calculated strike. Before anyone could react, Olivia snatched her phone from the counter. "Liv, what are you doing?" Mark asked, finally looking up, a flicker of panic in his eyes. But he didn't move to stop her. My mother just gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. With trembling, theatrical fingers, Olivia dialed. Her voice, when she spoke, was a quivering mess of feigned terror. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's tinny voice echoed from the phone. "My sister," Olivia cried, her eyes locked on mine, gleaming with a cold, triumphant malice. "She's at my parents' house. She's being violent and aggressive. I think she's going to hurt me. Please, you have to send someone. Please hurry." She hung up, and the silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of my own heart shattering in my chest. The wail of the siren started as a faint, almost imperceptible cry in the distance, but it grew louder with terrifying speed. The silence in the living room was thick and suffocating, broken only by Olivia's staged, hiccuping sobs. My father stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief, while my mother wrung her hands, her eyes darting between me and the front window. Mark just stared at the floor, his jaw tight, refusing to meet my gaze. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then, the room was bathed in strobing flashes of red and blue light, slicing through the drawn curtains and painting eerie, dancing shadows on the walls. 2 sharp, authoritative knocks echoed from the front door. My father, moving like a man in a trance, went to open it. 2 police officers stood on the porch, their silhouettes framed by the porch light. The older one had a calm, weathered face and a sturdy build. The other was younger, his expression sharp and alert. "Good evening, sir. We received a 911 call about a domestic disturbance," the older officer, whose name Tag Red Miller, said in a steady voice. Yes, come in," my father stammered, stepping aside. Their presence immediately changed the dynamic of the room. The family drama had become a public spectacle, an official incident. Olivia, seeing her audience, amplified her performance. "She just went crazy," she cried, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She was screaming, I thought she was going to hit me." My stomach dropped. The lie was so blatant, so venomous. "That's not true," I burst out, my voice cracking. "We were arguing, that's all." Officer Miller held up a hand. "Ma'am, please, let's just try to calm down." He turned to his partner. "Davis, why don't you speak with them over there?" He gestured toward Olivia, Mark, and my parents, who had huddled together on the couch like a flock of frightened sheep. He then turned his attention to me. "Ma'am, could you step into the kitchen with me, please?" His tone was professional, but the request felt like an accusation. I followed him into the kitchen, the scene of the initial crime, my legs feeling like lead. "So, what's your side of the story?" Officer Miller asked, leaning against the counter. His eyes were neutral, scanning my face for any hint of deception. I took a shaky breath, trying to organize the chaos in my mind. "My sister, she's with my ex-boyfriend," I started, my voice trembling. "We were having a family dinner. Tensions were high. We had an argument. I was upset," I yelled, "but I never ever threatened her. I didn't touch her. She's twisting everything." "Did you throw anything?" Break anything?" he asked, his gaze unwavering. "No, absolutely not. Look around, is anything broken?" I gestured wildly at the pristine kitchen. "This is about something else. This is her wanting me to be the bad guy so she can feel better about what she did." He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. After a few minutes, Officer Davis came into the kitchen. "Their story is she became verbally abusive and aggressive, cornered her sister. They were afraid it was going to get physical," Davis reported quietly. "They." The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Not just Olivia. They, my parents. Mark. Not one of them had defended me. Not one of them had told the truth. In their silence, they had condemned me. Officer Miller nodded slowly, his eyes still on me. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator. I felt my entire world collapsing, the foundation of my family turning to dust beneath my feet. I was utterly and completely alone, standing in my parents' kitchen, being evaluated like a criminal based on the lies of the people I was supposed to trust most. Officer Miller sighed, the sound loud in the tense silence of my parents' kitchen. He ran a hand over his tired face. "Look, Miss Evans," he started, his tone shifting from investigator to mediator. "We have conflicting stories here. Your sister is hysterical, but there are no marks on her. You're calm, but your family is backing her version of events, even if they're not saying much." He glanced toward the living room, where I could feel the weight of their collective judgment. "We're not going to arrest anyone tonight. There's no cause, but we can't just leave either. This is a volatile situation." He led me back into the living room, a lamb being returned to the silent wolves. Officer Sanchez stood near the door, a stoic statue. My parents were on the sofa, my mother staring at her hands in her lap, my father looking at a dark spot on the carpet as if it held all the answers. Olivia was tucked under Mark's arm, her sobs having subsided into quiet, theatrical shudders. Her eyes, red and swollen, flickered toward me with a flash of cold triumph. "All right, folks," Officer Miller announced to the room. "As I told your daughter, no arrests are being made. However, to ensure everyone's safety and de-escalate the situation, we need to separate the parties for the night." A heavy pause hung in the air. Every eye, except for my parents, landed on me. The expectation was a physical force pressing me down. "Chloe," Officer Miller said, his voice now formal, "is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? A friend's place, perhaps?" It wasn't a question. It was an eviction notice. I looked at my mother, my heart screaming for her to say something, anything. "No, she's our daughter, she stays here." But she wouldn't meet my gaze. I looked at my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike and to always stand up for myself. He flinched, turning his head slightly toward the window. They were abandoning me. Right here, in front of strangers, they were choosing my sister's lie over my truth. "Yes," I whispered, the word tasting like ash. "I can go." "Okay, why don't you go pack an overnight bag? Officer Sanchez will escort you," Miller said, his tone final. Escorted, like a criminal. I walked, numb, toward the staircase. Each step creaked under my feet, a familiar sound that now felt alien. I passed photos on the wall, me and Olivia as kids, smiling with missing teeth, a family vacation to the Grand Canyon. They were artifacts from another life, a life where I belonged. In my old bedroom, the floral wallpaper I'd picked out at 16 seemed to mock me. Officer Sanchez stood quietly in the doorway, giving me a semblance of privacy, but making his presence known. My hands shook as I pulled a duffel bag from the closet. I threw in a change of clothes, my toothbrush, my laptop. My eyes caught on a small, framed photo on my nightstand. Me and Mark at a college football game, his arms slung around me, both of us beaming. I grabbed it, turned it face down, and left it there. I couldn't bear to look at it, but I couldn't bear to leave it for her to find either. Walking back down the stairs felt like a walk of shame. They were all still there, frozen in their tableau of betrayal. I didn't look at any of them. I couldn't. I walked to the front door, the officer a step behind me. As my hand closed around the cold brass knob, I felt a final, desperate urge to turn around, to plead my case one last time. But then I saw my reflection in the dark glass of the door, a woman defeated, alone. I opened it and stepped out into the cool, damp Ohio night. The flashing red and blue lights of the cruiser painted the suburban street in surreal, strobing colors. Behind me, the door clicked shut, sealing my exile. The red and blue lights of the cruiser receded down the quiet suburban street, leaving me bathed in the cold, yellow glow of a single streetlight. For a moment, the world was utterly silent, the only sound the frantic thumping of my own heart against my ribs. The front door of my childhood home remained shut, a solid, unforgiving barrier. They were in there, my mother, my father, my sister, my ex-boyfriend, and I was out here. Expelled. The finality of it crashed over me, a physical wave of nausea and cold dread. My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled for my phone. My thumb hovered over my mom's contact, a pathetic, conditioned reflex. What would I even say? Why? I knew why. I'd seen it in their faces, the weary convenience of siding with the easier, more dramatic daughter. Siding with Olivia had always been the path of least resistance. My compliance had been mistaken for strength, and her hysterics for fragility. Shame and rage warred within me. I couldn't stand on the sidewalk a moment longer, a spectacle for any curious neighbors peering through their blinds. Clutching the strap of my overnight bag, I turned and walked, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the evening stillness. I didn't have a destination. I just needed to move, to put distance between me and that closed door. I ended up on a cold metal bench at a small neighborhood park a few blocks away. The swings creaked softly in the breeze, a mournful, rhythmic sound. I finally scrolled through my contacts, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. My finger stopped on Sarah, my best friend since college. She was the one person who had never asked me to be okay with Mark and Olivia, who had simply listened and said, "That's unbelievably messed up." My call went to her voicemail. I hung up without leaving a message, a fresh wave of despair washing over me. Was this it? Was I completely alone? A minute later, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, "Hey, in a loud movie. Everything okay?" My thumbs shook as I typed. "No, not okay. Can I call you back in a bit?" Her reply was instantaneous. "Stepping out now. Call me." I hit the button. She answered on the first ring. "Chloe, what's wrong? You sound awful." The dam broke. A choked sob escaped my lips. "Sarah," I rasped, the name a jagged piece of glass in my throat. Olivia called the cops on me." There was a beat of stunned silence. "She what? Where are you?" "At my parents'," I said, then corrected myself with a bitter laugh. "Well, not at them. Outside, they kicked me out." "Stay right where you are. I'm leaving now. Send me your location. I'll be there in 15 minutes. There was no judgment, no disbelief, just a firm, protective anger in her voice that was the first warmth I'd felt all night. "We'll figure this out, Chloe. I promise." Waiting for her, huddled on that bench, the shock began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. The hurt was still there, a deep, gaping wound. But beneath it, something new was forming. A stone of resolve in the pit of my stomach. They had chosen their side. They had pushed me out, banking on me to absorb the blow, to swallow the injustice and quietly disappear. They were wrong. This wasn't just about a stolen boyfriend anymore. This was about my family believing, or pretending to believe, that I was a threat. It was about a lie so profound it had gotten the law involved. And I would not let it stand. The warmth of Sarah's small Austin apartment was a physical shock after the humid chill of the night. It smelled of her, a mix of cinnamon-scented candles and the faint, clean scent of laundry detergent. She didn't say anything at first, just wrapped me in a hug that felt like it was holding my fractured pieces together. She guided me to her worn, comfortable couch, draped a soft fleece blanket over my shoulders, and pressed a steaming mug of chamomile tea into my hands. My fingers were so cold, they barely registered the heat. "Okay," she said, settling cross-legged on the floor in front of me, her expression a fierce mix of concern and anger. "Start from the beginning, and don't leave anything out." And so I did. The story tumbled out of me, a torrent of humiliation and disbelief. The tense dinner, the condescending smile on Olivia's face, the flash of the cheap locket. When I got to the part about Olivia dialing 911, Sarah's jaw tightened. "She did not," she whispered, her voice dangerously low. "She did, and they just stood there, Sarah. Mom, Dad, Mark, they just watched. They let her do it." My own voice cracked on the last words, the full weight of that silent betrayal hitting me again. "They're cowards," Sarah spat, her usual easygoing nature replaced by a protective fury that warmed me more than the tea. "All of them. To let her lie like that, to watch you get escorted out of your own family home by the police. That's not a family, Chloe. That's a cult with Olivia as the leader." Her anger was a balm. It validated the storm raging inside me, confirming I wasn't crazy, that what happened was as monstrous as it felt. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. Then, Sarah's focus sharpened. The comforting friend became the strategist. "Okay, so crying is done for now," she said, her tone shifting to business. "We need a plan. First, you're staying here as long as you need. My couch is your couch, but we need to think about the next steps. Practical things." I nodded, grateful for the direction. "My laptop, my work clothes. My everything is there." "We'll figure that out," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "But there's something more important. Chloe, she didn't just have a tantrum. She called the police and filed a false report. She accused you of a crime. That's not just a family argument anymore. That's serious." I'd been so focused on the emotional pain that the legal reality hadn't fully sunk in. A record, an official report stating I was violent. My stomach churned with a new kind of nausea. What do I do?" I asked, my voice small. "You fight back," Sarah said, her eyes blazing with conviction. "Not with yelling or drama, you fight smart. Tomorrow, we're going to find you a lawyer. Not to sue them for millions, but to understand your rights. To find out how to get that lie off your record and what legal recourse you have against Olivia for what she did. They used official channels to hurt you. You can use them to protect yourself." The word lawyer sounded extreme alien. This was my family. But Sarah was right. They had crossed a line that had nothing to do with family ties and everything to do with the law. The cold resolve I'd felt on the park bench solidified into something hard and clear. It wasn't just about getting revenge, it was about reclaiming the truth. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier than it had been all night. "Okay. A lawyer." The lawyer's office was a world away from the emotional chaos of my parents' home. It was quiet, orderly, and smelled of old books and fresh coffee. Miss Albright, a sharp woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor, laid out the facts on her polished mahogany desk. "Filing a false police report is a misdemeanor in this state, Chloe," she said, her voice calm and even. "It's a serious offense. If you choose to pursue this, you would file a complaint, an investigation would follow, and Olivia could face criminal charges. It's not about revenge, it's about the integrity of the system she tried to manipulate." Beside me, Sarah squeezed my hand. The legal terms, the clear, logical progression of consequences, it was like a splash of cold water. The swirling vortex of hurt and betrayal in my chest began to calm. For the first time in days, I felt the ground beneath my feet. Knowledge was power, and Miss Albright had just handed me an arsenal. Driving back to Sarah's apartment, a new resolve settled over me. "I don't want to send her to jail," I said, looking out at the passing city streets. "But I can't let her think she got away with it. I need my things, and I need to do it on my terms." I called my mother that afternoon. My voice was steady, devoid of the emotion she was likely expecting. I informed her I would be coming by at 6 p.m. to collect all of my belongings. I told her I would be bringing Sarah with me and that I expected no interference. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy before she finally agreed with a meek, "Okay, Chloe." When Sarah and I walked through the front door that evening, the tension was thick enough to taste. My parents stood awkwardly in the living room, while Olivia and Mark sat on the couch, a united front of defiance. Olivia's eyes were narrowed, ready for a fight. I ignored them all. With Sarah at my side, I walked straight to my old bedroom and began methodically packing boxes. Every book, every piece of clothing, every framed photo was a piece of a life I was leaving behind. After about 20 minutes, Olivia appeared in the doorway, blocking it. "Are you happy now?" she sneered. "Tearing this family apart over a stupid locket?" I didn't look at her. I simply folded a sweater and placed it in a box. "This was never about a locket, Olivia. You know that. All this drama because you can't stand to see me happy," she pushed, her voice rising. Mark and my parents hovered behind her, their faces a mixture of anxiety and guilt. I finally stopped packing and turned to face her, my expression calm. "This isn't drama. This is about consequences." I looked her directly in the eye. "I met with a lawyer today. I was informed that filing a false police report, accusing someone of violence to manipulate the authorities, is a criminal offense. It carries fines, a permanent record, and potential jail time." The color drained from her face. Mark looked horrified, finally seeming to grasp the gravity of the lie he'd silently supported. My parents stared, speechless. "I haven't decided whether or not I'll press charges," I continued, my voice level. "My decision will depend entirely on whether I am ever contacted by any of you again. This is not a negotiation. It's a boundary. I'm done." I picked up the last box. Sarah and I walked past my frozen family, their silence no longer a weapon against me, but a sign of their defeat. As I closed the front door behind me for the last time, I didn't feel loss. I felt the crisp, clean air of freedom. The road ahead was mine to build, and for the first time, it felt like an open highway.